Well, are you a collector or even a hoarder? Andrew, you were telling me beforehand of your three sheds with all the stuff from years ago that you've accumulated, your parents accumulated before you. Up in the loft as well. Anyone else collect things? Anyone? We might have a slide coming up. Oh, okay, Sarah, admit it. What do you collect? Cats. Oh, right. How many cats have you got?
I've got 3 real ones, but lots of ornaments.
Oh, okay. I was getting worried now. If you had a whole house full of live cats, but you got three real ones and lots of china. Yeah, Elizabeth and I had a moment when we first met where we seemed to be collecting frogs, the china frogs, not the real ones. I don't know why. We got over that, I'm afraid. I'm glad to say. Anyone else collect things? The spoon collection, anyone got a spoon collection? Oh, it's a shame, isn't it? Or souvenirs? Stamps? I did used to collect stamps. I don't know if they're worth anything now, but and coins. Next slide. Here's a few people that collect things. This is Anne Atkins. She's English, and her collection of 2,032 gnomes. Anyone got a gnome they could donate? Oh, well done. Elsa, maybe you ought to get in touch with Anne Atkins and donate it. Next one. This is Dick Falensky's collection of 36,000 golf balls. Anyone a golfer here? Okay. Can you see any reason why you would collect 36,000 golf balls? I don't know if they're all different. I suppose they must be all different, with different numbers or colours or whatever. Yeah, some have even got little boxes to the special ones. Next one. Yeah, this is 600 different bricks. He lives in France, Christian Morceau's collection of 600 different bricks. Whatever turns you on, isn't it? Yeah. And one more. Yeah, Martina Spellenberg, a German collection of 125,866 paper napkins. There you are. I don't know if they've been used or not. Alan, you inspired? As a URC treasurer, obviously you're interested in collections, but maybe a different kind of collection. Next slide. Alan, while we say we do wish you well at General Assembly next weekend. It's crept up on certainly me. It used to be, we'd get the book of reports, and as ministers we would read them copiously before any assembly. I'm afraid it's passed me by so far, but I will try and look at the reports online. So, anyone else admit now they collect something? No, you're all keeping quiet. Pill boxes. Okay. How many have you got? About 4. Yes. When is a collection not a collection? How many do you have for it to be a collection? Let's have the next slide. So the Bible, there's the Bible. That is an amazing collection. It isn't a uniform one book that was written all at the same time. It's a collection of lots of different writings, different styles, different times, different personalities behind those writings. It's a very special collection for Christians and people of faith. So the next slide just reminds us that it's a kind of bookcase of lots of different books collected together. And there you have the Old and the New Testament in that bookcase. And then the next slide takes us into the Old Testament, and that's a collection of 39 books, but some of those books are, well, all of those books are collections themselves, collections of stories that have been gathered over perhaps centuries, sayings, poetry, and all the rest. And so in the Old Testament, you have the history books, and then you move to the poetry books that include particularly the Psalms, and then the books of the prophets. And that's where we're focusing this summer, on prophecy, on the books of the prophets, the major prophets and the minor prophets too. So the next slide just focuses down. So we've looked at two prophets so far in our series, Nathan and Elijah, and those we heard about through the history books, through the first book of Samuel and the first book of Kings. But now, next slide, we turn to the books that have been named after the prophets. And these are collections themselves. And today we focus particularly on that first major prophet, Isaiah, the book of Isaiah. So the next slide. Here are the major prophets. Oh yeah, I don't know if anyone uses mnemonics, yes. I can't say it really. This could be really useful. My memory's terrible. I can't remember where the prophets are sometimes. So I just love every day. It spells out the first letter of the major prophets. There's some debate about Daniel. Is Daniel a major or minor prophet? It's a bit of a question. But there you are. Try to remember. It's a good phrase. I just love every day. Quite positive. And the next one, the minor prophets, the mnemonic for that is having Jesus always offers joy. My new happy zookeeper hosts zebra manicures. I seem to have gone off the biblical theme at that point. I've not heard of zebras or manicures in the Old Testament, but there you are. Maybe you'll remember it. Do you think you might remember that one? Having Jesus always offers joy. That's a good one. My new happy zookeeper hosts zebra manicures. Try and think of a zebra having a manicure. And you might remember the list, the order of the minor prophets. But as I say, we're going to focus on Isaiah. The next slide. I'll just remind you of what the prophets were about. They're not just about predicting things. They're about speaking God's word into the present situation. So they're there from the early days of the people of Israel. They were close to God. They were full of honesty and integrity. And above all, they were willing to speak out. So they didn't just sit back and see that the nation was going to the dogs and say, oh, well, so be it. They actually spoke out against what they saw was wrong and what they saw could be right. And they revealed the present as much as the future. Yeah, we're getting towards hearing a little bit from Isaiah and from Jesus. Let's have the next slide. So Isaiah is called to be a prophet, and he has this experience in the temple in the year, it says, King Uzziah died. It was around 740 BC, so before Christ. That's a long time ago. A long time ago. And the next slide. He does mention his wife. He doesn't mention her by name, but he does say that his wife was a prophet as well. I'm afraid the women prophets do not get much attention in Scripture, but they were there. And then the next slide. So the book of Isaiah has the sayings of Isaiah, that prophet from the 8th century before Christ. But it's much more than just his sayings. It's a collection. And when scholars looked at it carefully, they realized that later chapters relate to a wholly different time in the history of the people of Judah and Israel. So chapters 40 to 55 relate to the time when Cyrus was king of Persia. That's 550 to 530 BC. That's a lot later, 200 odd years later. This is a collection that's been gathered over centuries. Let's have the next slide. And chapters 56 to 66 relate to a slightly later time, just after the return of the people from exile, going right up to about 500 BC. And the next slide. Scholars call them different Isaiahs. So you have first Isaiah, second Isaiah, or Deutero-Isaiah, and you have third Isaiah, or Trito-Isaiah. There's a bit of question about the third Isaiah, but there you are. It's a family, in fact, a whole group of followers of this prophet who took his words and then reapplied them to their own time and received new prophecies and new words. So it's a collection of words spoken over many years, 240 years perhaps. And the next slide. And things can change over 200 years. Think about the year Queen Elizabeth died, 2022. But then think back to Queen Victoria, and even right back to King George. That's the sort of period that we're talking about when we look at the book of Isaiah. Then the next slide. So here we are. It's a collection of powerful words. And the fact that it wasn't just by one prophet makes no difference. In fact, it makes it even more powerful that these words spoke again and again to the people of God. And then the next slide. And it's often been called the fifth gospel because there's so much in the book of Isaiah that points to Jesus, so much that inspired Jesus, so much that is fulfilled in Jesus. And so we're almost getting to this reading that we're going to hear. Let's just have a few more. What might that be? Any ideas? What are you seeing there? Can you see? What do you think? What? A cave. Yeah, we're seeing a cave. In fact, a whole series of caves. And yeah, you even know the cave. They're the caves of Qumran, a community of Qumran on the near Jordan, in the present country of Jordan. Next slide. And this is the book of Isaiah that was found, the scroll of Isaiah, the whole scroll. Scrolls deteriorate, they crumble, but this was one of the oldest and most complete scroll of Isaiah that had been found in modern times. That was discovered in 1946. They just shepherds found this cave and found hidden this scroll and a collection of scrolls. And then they found more and more caves and scrolls that had been collected by this community that lived in those caves. What happened to that community, we do not know. So a scroll, how does a scroll work? The next slide. You have to unwind it. I think, I'm not absolutely sure, but I assume that you have the scroll in the center of the book and you can either go backwards, forwards or backwards. Problem with Hebrew, you're going backwards is forwards and all the rest. But here you are. You have this scroll. And we're going to hear a reading where Jesus is asked to read the lesson, just as we've asked Elsa to read the lesson today. And he has to he's given the scroll of Isaiah, and then he decides, he's not been told which chapter to read, he selects what he wants to read to the people. So the next slide, here we are. He's given the scroll, and the next slide, he unrolls the scroll, he finds the words from Isaiah chapter 61, okay? Verses 1 and 2, and the next slide, and we read about this.